Welcome to Movie Magic 96, your one-stop shop for all things movies. From reviews to unboxings and collections, I'm here to celebrate the magic of cinema. Now, let's roll the film. In today's video, we're checking out the newest adaptation of Bram Stoker's iconic novel, simply titled Dracula. So, let's sink our teeth into it. The film is directed by Luc Besson, best known for The Fifth Element and Leon the Professional, and the music is composed by the legendary Danny Elfman. Dracula originally released in France in July of 2025 before making its way to a wider audience. One thing that really stood out to me right away was the poster. It's incredibly simple, featuring Dracula with the long silhouette of his coat against a white background and his head partially obscured. It's minimal, eerie, and very effective. The cast includes Caleb Landry Jones as Dracula, Christoph Waltz as the priest, Zoe Blue portraying both Elizabetha and Mina Murray. Right off the bat, I have to give a huge shout out to Caleb Landry Jones. He plays Dracula perfectly, managing to be seductive, imposing during battle, and genuinely frightening with his line delivery, while also dialing his performance back effectively once the character ages. There's a vulnerability underneath the menace that really sells the tragedy of the character. Zoe Blue also nails her dual role as Elizabetha and Mina. She convincingly shifts from a confident queen to a more subdued, everyday woman of the era, making the emotional through line between the two characters believable. Christoph Waltz, while operating in familiar territory performance-wise, still delivers a solid and commanding presence as the priest. Matilda De Angelis brings an unhinged, sensual energy to Maria that makes her stand out, especially as the story progresses. I really like the way this version of the story is framed, with Dracula recounting his tragic past to Jonathan through flashbacks while searching for his soulmate in the modern age. It's a fresh narrative device that keeps the story moving while deepening Dracula's emotional arc. I can understand why some viewers might take issue with the perfume used to lure women, but for me it was a creative twist. We've seen the hypnotic trance angle so many times before that this felt like a welcome change. This adaptation puts Dracula and Elizabetha's romance front and center. Mina shows very little interest in her fiancé Jonathan, which clearly signals that this is first and foremost a tragic love story rather than a traditional monster tale. Dracula's decision to throw the perfume into the fire and try to form a genuine connection with Mina instead was a great character moment showing growth and restraint. Visually, the film is stunning. The opening montage does a fantastic job establishing the deep love between the two title characters. Shooting much of it in a single room reinforces the idea that despite wealth, power, and royalty, their love was pure and intimate. Mina's headdress and outfit while fleeing the castle are absolutely gorgeous, and the costume design overall is a highlight. The battle sequences are packed with striking imagery. The horse armor, army armor, and especially Vladimir's shoulder pieces and dragon helmet all look incredible. The tactic of lighting a wall of fire to protect against the Ottomans was a great visual moment. That said, some of the fight choreography feels a bit too sped up, and I would have liked to see more gore, not just in the opening battle, but throughout the film. The castle itself is easily my favorite Dracula castle design yet, surpassing both the 1992 film and Nosferatu 2024. The Gothic architecture, sharp edges, and ornate detailing perfectly match my personal taste. Inside, the chandeliers, paintings, gold accents, and overall atmosphere are rich and immersive. The tragedy of Vladimir not reaching Elizabetha in time is genuinely heartbreaking. The horseback chase sequence with bear traps, sword throws, and the uncertainty of whether he saves her kept me completely locked in. Watching Dracula repeatedly attempt to off himself by freezing on his wife's tomb or throwing himself from the castle is also deeply emotional. This version leans more heavily into religious themes than previous adaptations, with frequent dialogue about God, forgiveness, and damnation. Stakes, crosses, and sunlight all function as expected, and it's also stated that garlic does not affect vampires here, which helps clarify the rules of this universe. Dracula's appearance evolves in interesting ways. The old Dracula wild hairstyle returns yet again. Thankfully, not as distracting as Gary Oldman's infamous look in the 1992 film, but still notable, with long strands of hair and a crown-like headpiece. And I have to say, once it was pointed out to me, I couldn't unsee how much Caleb Landry Jones resembles a young Mick Jagger. There are some elements that may divide viewers, like Dracula seemingly being able to walk in daylight without explanation, which felt inconsistent unless I missed a key detail. The dance sequence may also not work for everyone, but I personally love the elaborate ballroom sets and costume designs. The gargoyles were another bold addition. I enjoyed them as a supernatural alternative to Renfield, and I interpreted the bald, thin children as representations of the gargoyles' souls. I can definitely see some audiences not liking this choice though. The sped up montage of the gargoyles collecting gold and trinkets over centuries was a fun way to show Dracula's growing wealth. Some standout moments include the nuns crawling over Dracula to form a pedestal, the emotional scene of him opening Elizabeth's tomb, and the carnival sequence with Mina and Maria, which was charming and a nice glimpse into old school festival entertainment. The music plays a big role as well, reinforcing how sound can trigger memories, a concept I strongly agree with in real life. My favorite kill in the film has to be Maria's brutal death. A jump scare, followed by decapitation, a gunshot wound to the chest, and finally being impaled with a cross. The final battle is also a blast, with Dracula tearing through guards effortlessly. It's been a while since I last revisited Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, so I may be missing a few things, but these were the key differences and similarities that stood out to me. In the 1992 film, Elizabetha takes her own life, which directly leads to Dracula's renunciation of God. In this version, her death occurs during her attempted escape, which slightly shifts the blame away from her and reframes Dracula's rage as grief rather than pure spiritual betrayal. Both films emphasize the tragic romance between Dracula and Elizabetha/Mina, but the 2026 version pushes this even further by minimizing Mina's connection to Jonathan. In Coppola's film, Mina is torn between two worlds, whereas here, her pull towards Dracula feels almost inevitable from the start. The asylum scenes also differ significantly. Coppola's film presents the asylum as grimy, oppressive, and grotesque, reflecting Renfield's madness. In this adaptation, the sanitarium feels more clinical and open, with patients roaming freely rather than being locked away, which creates a less horrific but more grounded atmosphere. Maria's role loosely mirrors Lucy's arc from the 1992 film, but with noticeable changes. Instead of watching Lucy deteriorate after being bitten, we meet Maria already restrained and unstable, making her fate feel more immediate and tragic rather than mysterious. Additionally, replacing Renfield with gargoyles removes the classic servant-master dynamic and instead gives Dracula a more mythical entourage. Visually, both films favor lavish production design, but where Coppola leaned heavily into theatrical, stage-like imagery, this version opts for sharper Gothic architecture and more modern visual effects, even though there was some questionable CGI. Even the title card echoes classic horror, though its script-style lettering closely resembles recent films like Nosferatu 2024 and Frankenstein 2025, making it feel a little bit less distinct. There's a reason the story continues to endure, and I still never get tired of seeing new interpretations. While I still consider Bram Stoker's Dracula the definitive version, with Nosferatu 2022 as a close second, this lands as my third favorite adaptation. For that reason, I'm giving Dracula a solid 4 out of 5. So what did you think of Dracula? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram at MovieMagic1996. Thanks so much for everything, and go check out a Dracula adaptation today.